The church bells were supposed to ring for her that morning. The white lilies, her favorite flowers, lined the aisle in perfect symmetry. The guests had gathered. The air smelled faintly of roses and perfume, and the golden sunlight spilled softly through the stained glass windows. But beneath the beauty and calm of that day, there stood a woman whose heart was breaking apart in silence. Emma stood in her wedding gown, her hands trembling as she held her bouquet, waiting for the man she thought would complete her life. But as the minutes turned into hours, whispers began to fill the church. Her groom had disappeared. No call, no note, nothing, just absence. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of unexpected love, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. It truly helps more hearts find stories that heal. Emma had dreamed of this day since she was a little girl. She wasn't someone who demanded luxury. All she wanted was sincerity. She met Nathan 2 years ago at a charity event, and he had seemed so perfect, charming, kind, and devoted. He spoke of building a life together, a small home, maybe a family someday. For Emma, who had grown up in foster care and never knew what real family felt like, that promise had meant the world. She had finally felt seen, wanted, and loved. So when Nathan got down on one knee 6 months ago, she said yes with tears of joy. But that morning, the universe had other plans. At first, she thought maybe he was delayed, traffic, a flat tire, something minor. But when his best man couldn't reach him, when his phone went dead, and when his mother started crying quietly in the corner of the church, the truth came crashing down like thunder. He wasn't coming. Emma stood frozen at the altar, surrounded by murmurs and pitying stares. It felt like the air itself was suffocating her. She wanted to disappear, to vanish with her heartbreak. Her father wasn't there. She had never met him. Her mother had died when she was a baby. Her foster homes were just temporary stops, never a real home. Nathan had been the first person to make her believe in permanence. And now, in her wedding gown, she felt like a ghost haunting her own dream. The wedding coordinator softly asked if she wanted to go home, but Emma couldn't move. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was the feeling of being unwanted again, forgotten again. She walked out of the church hours later, alone, still in her gown, the veil torn slightly from where she had tugged at it in frustration. The rain had started falling, gentle at first, then harder, soaking her as she stood under the gray sky. She didn't care. The white dress, once a symbol of new beginnings, now clung to her like a cruel memory. She wandered the streets for hours, aimless, until exhaustion pulled her into a small park nearby. There she sat on a bench, her makeup washed away by the rain, her heart shattered into pieces that no one could see. That's when she heard it, the soft cry of a little boy. Emma turned her head and saw a child of maybe 6, sitting under a tree, holding a small blue backpack close to his chest. He was crying, but not loudly, like he was used to being unheard. Emma's heart, heavy as it was, recognized that kind of pain instantly. She slowly approached him and asked if he was okay. The boy looked up, his eyes wet, his lip trembling. He said he'd lost his dad while playing at the park. Emma immediately took off her veil and wrapped it around the boy's shoulders to keep him warm. Together, they searched for his father, calling his name. After 10 minutes, a man came running across the park, panic written all over his face. When he saw his son, he dropped to his knees and hugged him tightly, tears of relief streaming down his face. The man looked up at Emma and froze for a moment. There she was, a bride, soaked, pale, her dress clinging to her like sorrow itself, but with eyes full of compassion. The man introduced himself as Daniel. He was a single father raising his son Ethan after losing his wife in an accident 2 years earlier. When he asked why Emma was out there in a wedding gown, she smiled faintly and said, "Let's just say it didn't go as planned." She expected awkward sympathy, but instead, Daniel simply nodded and said, "I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that." His words, simple but genuine, hit deeper than she expected. They parted ways that evening, but Daniel's son insisted on giving Emma one of his small toys for good luck. She accepted it, a little blue plastic car, and placed it carefully in her purse. Somehow, that gesture felt like a lifeline, a reminder that not all connections end in abandonment. Days passed. Emma tried to move on. She sold her wedding dress, left her apartment that was filled with memories of Nathan, and started volunteering at a community shelter. There, she met people with stories even more heartbreaking than hers. Mothers fleeing abuse, children who had nowhere to go, and elderly souls who had been forgotten by their families. Helping them started to heal her in ways she didn't expect. One afternoon, as she was serving food at the shelter, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "I didn't think I'd run into you again." She turned and saw Daniel holding a bag of donated clothes. Ethan was beside him, smiling brightly. That moment, simple as it was, felt like the start of something gentle and real. Daniel told her he volunteered at the shelter on weekends, and over time, their paths began crossing more often. They would talk, sometimes about deep things, sometimes about nothing at all. Daniel told her about the nights he'd wake up thinking he could still hear his wife's voice. Emma told him about the letters she used to write to a father she never knew. Both carried scars, but their pain somehow didn't frighten each other. It connected them. As weeks turned into months, Emma noticed something changing inside her. The laughter she thought she'd lost began to return. Daniel made her feel safe, not because he was trying to rescue her, but because he saw her as strong. And Ethan, sweet, playful Ethan, became a bright spot in her life. He'd run to her with drawings, hug her without reason, and call her Miss Emma in his little joyful voice. One chilly evening, Daniel invited her over for dinner. The table was simple but warm. Homemade pasta, a few candles, and a small vase with wildflowers that Ethan had picked. As they ate, Ethan looked up and asked, "Dad, can Miss Emma come to my school event next week? We're supposed to bring someone special." Daniel smiled, waiting for Emma's answer. She hesitated, feeling tears rise, but nodded yes. That night, as she walked home, Emma realized that love doesn't always arrive in grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it finds you in your most broken moment, when you least expect it. Months later, Daniel proposed, not with extravagance, but with sincerity. He took her to the park where they first met, where the rain had fallen over her shattered heart. He knelt down and said, "I don't want to fix your past. I just want to be part of your tomorrow." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered yes. When the wedding day arrived, Emma felt something entirely different from before. This time there was no fear of abandonment, only peace. She wore a simple lace gown and carried a bouquet of wildflowers, each one chosen by Ethan. But as she stood at the church doors, a thought crossed her heart like a shadow. She had no family to walk her down the aisle. She sighed, trying to hold back tears, when a small hand tugged on hers. It was Ethan. Dressed in a tiny suit, his eyes shining with pride, he said, "Can I walk you, Miss Emma? Like family?" Her knees almost gave out from emotion. She knelt and hugged him tightly, whispering, "You'd make me the happiest bride in the world." So when the doors opened and the guests stood, it wasn't a father or brother who walked her down the aisle. It was a little boy who had once been lost in a park, who had unknowingly found her heart when it was most lost. Every step felt like healing. Every tear that fell was a piece of her old pain leaving her soul. As she reached Daniel, their eyes met, and both knew that love had rewritten their stories, not with perfection, but with truth. The ceremony was small, intimate, filled with laughter and soft tears. When the vows were spoken, Daniel promised not a lifetime of promises, but a lifetime of effort. And Emma, with a voice steady and full of grace, said, "You walked into my life when I couldn't even stand, and now, because of you and Ethan, I know what home feels like." When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, the applause that followed wasn't just for a marriage, it was for two broken souls who had chosen to believe again. After the ceremony, as they stepped outside into the sunlight, Ethan threw petals in the air and shouted, "She's my mom now." The guests laughed and clapped, and Daniel wrapped his arm around her, whispering, "Welcome home." Emma looked up at the sky, feeling the warmth on her face, and silently thanked the day she thought had ruined her life, because it had led her here. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Your small gesture helps spread hope and love to others who may need it today. Before you go, tell us in the comments, do you believe that sometimes life breaks us only to rebuild us stronger? Emma's story reminds us that endings aren't always tragedies. Sometimes they're beginnings in disguise. The bride who was once left at the altar didn't just find love, she found family, purpose, and peace. And maybe that's what true happiness really is, when the broken pieces finally fit together to make something even more beautiful than before. Thank you for watching. Never stop believing in second chances, because miracles often start where hope was lost.